1. The exhaustion sleep cannot fix. Have you ever noticed how you can sleep for 8, 9, or 10 hours and still wake up feeling completely drained? Most people do not realize that there is a kind of exhaustion that rest can't paldice. It is a fatigue that lives deeper than the bone. It is not your body that is tired. It is your spirit. If you have ever felt physically present but emotionally running on empty, if you feel like you are dragging yourself through days waiting for a break that never comes, this is for you. Stay until the end, because the final lesson may change the way you see this deep exhaustion forever. Here is the truth few people want to face. You cannot sleep away spiritual fatigue. We live in a relentless world that praises constant movement and measures worth by productivity. You wake up, you rush, you produce, you solve problems, you plan for tomorrow. You are carrying the weight of expectations, the fear of falling behind, and the pressure to hold everything together. And when you finally lie down at night, your body is still, but your mind is running a marathon. You are exhausted from overthinking conversations that already happened. You are drained from worrying about futures that have not arrived. You are depleted from holding on so tightly to things you cannot control. Buddhist wisdom teaches us that this kind of profound suffering arises not simply from doing too much, but from clinging too tightly. When we attach our inner peace to the outcome of our outer efforts, we drain our vital energy. We fall into the illusion that if we just push a little harder, think a little faster, or control a little more, we will finally reach a place of permanent rest. But true rest does not come from finishing your endless list of tasks. True rest comes from non-attachment. It comes from the gentle surrender of the need to carry the world on your shoulders. Imagine a person holding a heavy stone at arm's length. At first, the stone feels manageable. You feel strong. But as the hours pass, the arm begins to ache, tremble, and eventually fail. The person believes they just need a moment to sit down, maybe close their eyes for a few minutes, before they stand up and hold the stone again. But the exhaustion is not caused by standing, it is caused by holding. The only way to find genuine relief is to drop the stone. Think about your own life. In your daily routine, that stone is the need to fix everything for everyone else. It is the silent anxiety about your career. It is the tension in your relationships. It is the unspoken, lingering fear that you are simply not doing enough. You keep taking weekends off, trying to sleep in, hoping to recover. But you are lying in bed while still gripping the stone in your mind. Ask yourself right now, what are you still holding on to that is making you feel so heavy? What responsibility, outcome, or fear are you carrying in your mind that was never yours to hold in the first place? Is this thought bringing you peace or feeding your fear? Stop, breathe, let that sink in. Pause for a moment. Observe the heaviness in your chest or the racing of your thoughts. Let the feeling rise without making it your identity. You do not need to figure it all out right this second. For just this moment, give yourself permission to loosen your grip. Drop the stone. Let the muscles of your mind finally relax. You are allowed to rest without earning it first. Because peace is not a destination you reach after a long life of striving. It is a quiet space you create in the present moment. But realizing you are exhausted is only the first step. Why do we insist on picking up the stone in the first place? And this is where the next truth begins. Because beneath this deep fatigue is a silent habit of carrying what does not belong to you. 2. The weight of carrying what is not yours. What if half the exhaustion you feel belongs to someone else? Here is a truth we rarely admit. Much of the emotional weight crushing your spirit was never assigned to you. You are carrying it because you have mistaken absorption for love and control for care. In our daily lives, we constantly take on the unfinished business of others. You try to manage how your partner feels. You carefully curate your words so no one in your family gets upset. You play the role of the peacemaker, the endless problem solver, the one who never drops the ball. You absorb the anxiety of the room the moment you walk into it, and slowly, without even realizing it, your own emotional space becomes crowded with the noise of everyone else's unresolved struggles. You are exhausted because you are living 3 lives at once: yours and the lives of the people you are trying to save. Buddhist wisdom teaches the profound practice of loving detachment. True compassion does not mean taking away another person's journey, nor does it mean absorbing their pain until you break. In Buddhist thought, every individual must walk their own path and face their own karma. When we try to fix others, or shield them from the natural consequences of their choices, we step outside our own space. We forget the boundary between compassion and control. Buddhism reminds us that we can walk beside someone in the rain, but we cannot stay dry for them. Imagine a small wooden boat meant to cross a wide, quiet river. It is built perfectly for one person and the few essential things they need for the journey. But as you prepare to push off the shore, people start handing you their luggage. First, a small bag, then a heavy trunk, then a box of rocks. Because you are kind, and because you want to be helpful, you take it all. By the time you are halfway across the river, the boat sits so low in the water that every small ripple threatens to sink it. The boat is not defective. It is simply carrying weight it was never designed to hold. Think about your own life. That heavy trunk is your co-worker's constant complaining that you nod along to every morning. That small bag is the guilt you feel when you cannot solve a friend's relationship problem. The box of rocks is the pressure to keep the peace at every family gathering. You are taking on everyone's luggage, and it is making the simple act of navigating your own life feel impossible. Ask yourself, look at the invisible weight you are carrying today. Whose expectations are these? Whose disappointment are you desperately trying to manage? What are you afraid will happen if you gently hand their luggage back to them? Pause. Breathe. You do not have to be everything to everyone. Visualize that heavy baggage in your hands. Now, mentally set it down on the riverbank. Say to yourself, "This is not mine to carry." You do not have to be cold or uncaring. You simply have to be honest about what belongs to you. Do your part, then release the outcome. Let the people you love carry their own stones. Setting down what is not yours is a profound act of self-respect. You cannot save a sinking ship if you are drowning under the weight of its cargo. But even when we empty the boat of other people's expectations, many of us still refuse to rest. We keep rowing frantically, terrified of what will happen if we simply let the boat float. And this is where the next truth begins. Because the deeper wound is not just what we carry, but what we are running from when we refuse to slow down. 3. The fear of being still. What if you are not actually afraid of failure, but completely terrified of silence? Here is a truth that is hard to admit. We do not just stay busy to get things done. We stay busy to avoid ourselves. You know this feeling. The moment you finally finish your tasks, the moment the house is quiet and the screens are off, a strange, creeping panic sets in. You instinctively reach for your phone. You find a new problem to fix. You manufacture urgency out of thin air. You pack your schedule with obligations and chores, turning even your simple hobbies into tasks that must be completed. You are deeply exhausted, yes, but the moment you sit down with nothing to do, guilt washes over you. We have built lives so loud and so fast that stillness feels like an emergency. You keep moving because you are afraid of what you will feel or what you will hear in your own mind when the noise finally stops. Buddhist wisdom teaches us that this restless running is the nature of an untamed mind. In Buddhist thought, true peace cannot be found by outrunning our internal discomfort. It is found by sitting with it. We are taught that mindfulness is not the forceful emptying of the mind, but the gentle art of allowing the mind to rest in the present moment, exactly as it is. The silence you are running from is not an empty void to be feared. It is the sacred space where true healing begins. When we constantly avoid stillness, we avoid our own presence. Imagine a glass of water scooped directly from a turbulent, muddy river. If you keep holding the glass and shaking it, the water remains cloudy, dark, and impenetrable. You cannot see through it. No amount of shaking will clean the water. But if you simply set the glass down on a quiet table and wait, something beautiful happens. Slowly, without any effort, the mud sinks to the bottom. The water becomes crystal clear. Think about your own life. Your constant busyness is the shaking of the glass. The endless scrolling on social media, the overscheduling of your weekends, the compulsive need to instantly reply to every message. All of this keeps the mud swirling. You think you are being productive, but you are only keeping your mind in a state of cloudy confusion. You are trying to find answers by shaking the glass harder. But the clarity you are desperately seeking will not come from more action. It will only come from stillness. Ask yourself, what are you avoiding when you refuse to slow down? What uncomfortable truth, quiet sadness, or hidden fear are you trying to outrun by keeping your schedule so painfully full? Are you afraid that if you finally stop moving, you will realize you are heading in the wrong direction? Stop, breathe, think about that. Stop trying to shake the glass. For just 5 minutes today, allow yourself to do absolutely nothing. Sit quietly. Let the thoughts rise. Let the emotions swirl. Do not judge them and do not fight them. Just watch them. Let the mud settle. Because peace is not the absence of chaotic thoughts. It is the patience to let them rest. You do not need to wage war against your own mind. You just need to stop running from it. But sitting still is incredibly difficult when you have spent your entire life believing that you must constantly prove your worth. And this is where the next truth begins. Because the inability to rest is often tied to a much deeper, invisible wound. 4. The hidden wound of earning your worth. What if you have been paying off a debt you never actually owed? Here is a truth that quietly breaks the spirit. Many of us do not believe we deserve to exist unless we are being useful. You have tied your right to rest to your level of achievement. You work late to prove your dedication. You bend over backward in relationships to ensure you are needed. You constantly calculate whether you have done enough today to justify sitting down tonight. You measure your value by your output, by how much money you earn, by how many tasks you check off, or by how much praise you receive. If you are not producing, you feel invisible. If you are not succeeding, you feel worthless. This is a quiet, exhausting way to live. You spend your days constantly auditioning for your own life, hoping that eventually someone or something will give you permission to finally feel like you are enough. But that permission never comes. Buddhist wisdom teaches us that this relentless pursuit of external proof is a fundamental misunderstanding of who we are. In Buddhist thought, your worth is not a currency to be earned, hoarded, or proven. It is your inherent nature. You do not have to justify your existence through labor, struggle, or success. The illusion that you must constantly earn your place in the world is a heavy chain. Buddhism reminds us that our true nature is already complete. The lotus flower does not need to prove its beauty to the pond before it is allowed to open. It simply blooms. Your value is not defined by what you produce, but by your very presence. Imagine a great oak tree standing in a quiet forest. Throughout the year, it changes. In summer, it produces leaves and shade. In autumn, it drops acorns to the forest floor. But in the deep, cold quiet of winter, the tree stands completely bare. It produces nothing. It offers no fruit, no leaves, and no shelter. Yet, the forest does not look at the winter tree and declare it worthless. The tree does not panic and try to force leaves through the frost just to prove it is still a tree. It rests. It gathers strength in its roots. It knows that its right to stand in the soil is absolute, whether it is blooming in the sun or standing completely still in the snow. Think about your own life, the relentless pressure you feel at your job, the anxiety over your bank account, the fear of falling behind your peers. This is you, standing in the middle of winter, desperately trying to force yourself to grow leaves. You are terrified that if you are bare, you will be cut down. You have convinced yourself that your worth is only in your fruit, and you have entirely forgotten the quiet strength of your roots. Ask yourself, who taught you that you had to earn your rest? What are you afraid will happen if you simply stop producing for a moment and just exist? Who are you when you are not being useful to someone else? Stop, breathe. You are not a machine. Drop the heavy armor of proving yourself. For just this day, remind yourself that you belong here simply because you are breathing. Let the feeling of being inherently enough rise without demanding proof. You do not need to perform today, because peace is not a reward handed out at the end of a hard day's work. It is your birthright. But letting go of the need to earn our worth forces us to confront how we have structured our entire reality. And this is where the next truth begins. Because we have not just misunderstood our worth, we have built our lives around the dangerous belief that suffering is what makes us valuable. 5. The illusion that struggle equals value. What if the amount of pain you endure has nothing to do with the quality of your life? Here is a truth we rarely question. We have been conditioned to believe that if we are not suffering, we are not doing it right. You wear your exhaustion like a badge of honor. You quietly boast about how little sleep you got, how many hours you worked, or how much you sacrificed for someone else. When life actually feels easy or peaceful, a strange guilt creeps in. You immediately look for the catch. You create problems where there are none, because, in your mind, happiness that does not cost you blood, sweat, or tears feels unearned. You have confused hardship with virtue. You believe that the harder the path, the greater the reward. And so you unconsciously choose the path of most resistance. You are deeply tired because you are secretly addicted to the struggle. Buddhist wisdom teaches a very different path. The core of Buddhism is not the glorification of suffering, but the liberation from it. When the Buddha first sought enlightenment, he tried extreme asceticism, starving himself and enduring immense physical pain, believing that supreme suffering would lead to supreme wisdom. But he found only exhaustion. He discovered the middle way, the path of balance, between overindulgence and harsh self-denial. In Buddhist thought, creating unnecessary struggle is just another form of attachment. Suffering is a natural part of human existence, but voluntarily clinging to it does not make you more noble. It only drains your life force. Imagine a thick rope tightly tangled into a massive knot. When you need to untie it, your first instinct is to pull the ends as hard as you can. You use all your strength, straining your muscles, sweating, and fighting the rope. You think that applying more force is the only way to solve the problem, but the harder you pull, the tighter the knot becomes. The struggle actually locks the knot in place. To untie it, you do not need more force. You need less. You have to gently push the fibers together, soften your grip, and create space for the rope to loosen. Think about your own life. How often do you pull at the knot of a difficult relationship, trying to force it to work through pure exhaustion? How often do you strain against your work, believing that grinding yourself to dust is the only way to prove you are dedicated? You are yanking on the rope. You are turning every minor obstacle into a war because you secretly believe that victory only counts if you survive a brutal battle. Ask yourself, do you feel guilty when life is peaceful? Why do you insist on making things harder than they need to be? What are you trying to prove by choosing the heaviest path? Stop, breathe. You do not have to bleed to be worthy of happiness. Stop pulling the rope. When you encounter resistance today, Do not immediately fight it. Soften your grip. Take a step back. Look at the problem and see if it can be gently unraveled with patience rather than force. Let the tension go. Because peace is not a trophy you win after a lifelong war. It is a quiet grace you allow in. But to stop fighting the knot, you must first learn how to interrupt your own instinct to pull. And this is where the next truth begins. Because the space between the struggle and the peace is hidden in a very specific, quiet moment. 6. The sacred power of the pause. What if the most powerful action you can take is no action at all? Here is the truth few people want to face. We are addicted to our own reactions. You live in a constant state of urgency. An email arrives with a demanding tone, and you reply instantly, your chest tight with defense. A loved one says something sharp, and you fire back before their words have even settled in the air. You feel a sudden pang of anxiety about tomorrow, and you immediately scramble to fix it today. We mistake reacting for resolving. You believe that if you respond quickly, you are in control. But constantly answering to every single trigger leaves you emotionally exhausted. You have become a puppet to your environment, allowing every passing comment, sudden fear, or minor inconvenience to violently yank your strings. Buddhist wisdom teaches us that between the event and your response, there is a quiet space, and in that space lies your freedom. Mindfulness is not about suppressing your emotions. It is not about pretending you are never angry, hurt, or afraid. It is about the sacred pause. It is the practice of observing the feeling without instantly becoming it. In Buddhist thought, a wise mind does not jump at every shadow. It waits. It watches the emotion rise and fall, recognizing that just because a feeling demands your attention does not mean it deserves your reaction. Imagine a tiny glowing spark landing on a patch of dry grass in a vast forest. If a strong gust of wind immediately blows across it, the spark catches the grass, ignites the brush, and quickly becomes a raging fire that consumes the trees. But what if there is no wind? What if the air in the forest remains completely still? The spark glows brightly for a brief second. It sits on the dry grass. But without the wind to feed it, it finds no momentum. It gently cools, turns to ash, and simply fades away. Think about your own life. That spark is the unfair criticism you received today. It is the message that rubbed you the wrong way. It is the sudden wave of panic about a mistake you made yesterday. When you instantly react in anger, fear, or panic, you are blowing violent wind onto the spark. You are turning a momentary feeling into an exhausting, all-consuming fire. You spend your days frantically trying to put out emotional fires that you helped ignite, simply because you refused to let the air remain still. Ask yourself, how many arguments could have been avoided if you had just waited one single minute to speak? How much of your daily exhaustion comes from fighting battles that would have quietly faded on their own? What are you so afraid will happen if you simply let the spark sit there? Stop, breathe, think about that. The next time you feel the urgent, burning need to react, do absolutely nothing. Do not speak. Do not type the message. Do not try to fix it. Just for 60 seconds, become completely still. Let the feeling burn hot in your chest, but do not act on it. Be the still air. Let the spark glow and watch it turn to ash. Because peace is not found by winning every argument or solving every sudden crisis. It is found by stepping out of the fire. But mastering the pause is only the beginning of taking your energy back. And this is where the next truth begins. Because once you stop reacting to every small spark, you must face the reality of the giant wheel you have been running on your entire life. 7. Stepping off the wheel of endless becoming. What if the reason you never feel like you have arrived is because you are constantly practicing how to leave? Here is a truth we rarely question. We live our entire lives in the waiting room of tomorrow. You tell yourself, I will finally rest when this project is done. You believe you will be happy when you get that promotion, when you find the right partner, when the busy season is over, or when you finally save enough money. You are living in a constant state of next. But when the next thing finally arrives, the relief only lasts for a passing moment before your mind instantly locks onto a brand new target. You are never actually experiencing your life. You are only ever preparing for it. This relentless chasing is what drains the light out of your days. You are exhausted because your mind is constantly living in a future that does not yet exist. Buddhist wisdom teaches us that this endless chasing is the root of profound spiritual fatigue. In Buddhist thought, this continuous cycle of craving and dissatisfaction is a wheel of endless becoming. We mistakenly believe that peace is a destination in the future, a prize we must acquire or achieve. But Buddhism reminds us that as long as our happiness is tied to a future condition, we will remain trapped, forever running. True liberation is the radical act of arriving exactly where you are. It is the realization that this present moment is not an obstacle to get through. It is your actual life. Imagine a weary traveler walking across a vast, quiet desert, desperate for a place to rest. In the distance, they see the horizon, a beautiful, golden line where the earth meets the sky. They convince themselves that if they can just reach that line, they will finally find shade, water, and permanent peace. So they walk, they run, they push themselves to the point of collapse. But no matter how fast or how far they travel, the horizon always remains the exact same distance away. The horizon is not a place you can reach, it is a visual illusion. The traveler is exhausted not by the desert, but by the impossible goal of catching the horizon. Think about your own life. The horizon is your deep belief that tomorrow holds the peace you cannot seem to find today. It is your quiet habit of wishing away your current circumstances, hoping the next chapter will finally be the one where you feel whole. You treat your present days as mere stepping stones. You rush through your mornings, you rush through your evenings, and you rush through your years. You are running toward a finish line that keeps moving further away. Ask yourself, how many times have you reached a milestone you once desperately wanted, only to instantly feel the heavy pressure of the next one? Are you actually living your life today, or are you just perpetually planning for it? What if there is absolutely nothing wrong with right now? Stop, breathe, let that sink in. Bring your mind back from tomorrow. For just a few minutes today, stop rushing to the next task. When you drink your tea, just drink your tea. When you walk, just walk. Give yourself permission to inhabit this exact moment without needing it to produce anything else. Because peace is not waiting for you at the end of a long, exhausting journey. It is available the second you stop running. But stepping off the wheel requires more than just stopping. It requires learning how to trust the space you land in. And this is where the next truth begins. Because we must unlearn our need to force outcomes and remember how to let things bloom in their own time. 8. Letting life move at its own rhythm. What if the hardest thing you ever have to do is simply allow things to happen? Here is a truth that goes against everything we have been taught. Most of our exhaustion comes from trying to control the speed of our own lives. You want the pain to heal yesterday. You want the career breakthrough right now. You want the relationship to be clear and settled immediately. When things do not move fast enough, panic sets in. You push harder. You manipulate situations, over-explain yourself, and try to force doors open that are firmly shut. You live in a state of constant, low-level frustration because reality is not matching the timeline you created in your head. You believe that if you do not strictly control the pace of every outcome, everything you have worked for will slip away. Buddhist wisdom teaches us that this desire to dictate timing is a profound source of suffering. In Buddhist thought, the universe operates on its own natural law, a continuous unfolding that does not answer to our personal anxieties. We are taught the truth of impermanence, that everything changes, but it changes in its own season, not on our hurried schedule. When we try to rush our healing, our success, or our inner peace, we are fighting the fundamental nature of existence. Buddhism reminds us that true harmony comes from aligning ourselves with the natural flow of life, rather than violently trying to drag it forward. Imagine a devoted gardener who plants a tiny seed in the dark earth. They water it carefully, ensure it has sunlight, and clear away the surrounding weeds. But after a few short days, when they do not see a green stem breaking through the soil, they grow anxious. They dig into the dirt, find the seed, and gently pull at it, trying to stretch it upward toward the light. They sincerely want to help it grow, but in their desperation to speed up the process, they destroy the fragile roots before they can even take hold. The seed did not need more force. It needed the dark, it needed the quiet, and it needed time. Think about your own life. How often are you digging up the seed? You obsess over a situation that is out of your hands, making panicked decisions just to feel like you are doing something. You worry about feeling behind in your life, comparing your messy middle chapter to someone else's polished ending. You are profoundly exhausted because you refuse to let your life organically unfold. You are pulling at the roots of your own growth, desperate to hold the flower before the stem is strong enough to support it. Ask yourself, what timeline are you desperately trying to enforce right now? What natural process are you trying to rush, simply out of the fear that it might never happen? Are you allowing your life the space to grow, or are you suffocating it with your need for absolute control? Stop, breathe, think about that. Step back from the soil. Today, practice the quiet art of trusting the unseen work. Do your part, plant your seeds, and then step away. Allow the timing of your life to be exactly what it is, without needing to constantly manipulate the clock. Let life meet you where you are. Because peace is not a strict schedule you successfully enforce, it is a gentle rhythm you learn to trust. But surrendering control of the timing is only possible when we stop viewing our current circumstances as something we must desperately escape. And this is where the final truth begins, because the ultimate cure for spiritual fatigue is learning how to build a reality that holds you exactly as you are. 9. Building a life you do not need to escape. What if the ultimate goal is not to survive your life, but to actually inhabit it? Here is a truth that brings all our struggles into the quiet light. We have accidentally designed lives we constantly need a vacation from. You structure your days like a tightly sealed pressure cooker. You wake up, put your head down, and push through the stress, the endless tasks, and the heavy expectations, telling yourself that you just need to make it to Friday. You dream of escaping to a quiet beach, to a new city, or to a distant time in the future when things will finally slow down. But even when you get that brief break, the deep exhaustion remains, because the fatigue that sleep cannot fix is not caused by your location. It is caused by how you are living. When your daily life is built on forcing outcomes, carrying what is not yours, and constantly proving your worth, no amount of sleep or temporary escape will ever truly restore your spirit. Buddhist wisdom teaches us that true liberation is not found by running away from our reality, but by transforming how we exist within it. In Buddhist thought, awakening does not mean floating above the world in a state of detached perfection. It means walking through your ordinary life with an open hand instead of a clenched fist. It is the realization that inner peace is not a distant shelter you must violently fight to reach. It is the quiet space you intentionally create in your everyday existence. Imagine building a house in a place where storms frequently roll through. If you are terrified of the weather, you might build a house with thick, windowless walls and heavy iron doors. You lock yourself inside, convinced you are keeping the danger out. But you are entirely cut off from the light, the air, and the changing seasons. The air inside grows stale. You are suffocating in your own fortress, constantly dreaming of stepping outside. But what if you built a house with wide windows and a porch? When the storm comes, you watch the rain fall, you feel the wind. You do not try to stop the weather, but you do not let it sweep you away either. You allow life to move through your space without letting it take away your center. Think about your own life and the deep, heavy exhaustion that brought you here today. That spiritual fatigue was never a sign that you were failing. It was a gentle, persistent alarm bell from your own soul, letting you know that the way you were living was no longer sustainable. You were never meant to carry the weight of the entire world. You were never meant to earn your right to rest. As you move forward, ask yourself, how can you build a life that has room for breath today? How can you create days that feel like a home rather than a cage you desperately need to escape? Stop. Breathe. You do not have to change your entire life overnight. You simply have to start making space. Set down the heavy stones you are holding. Hand back the luggage that does not belong to you. Let the muddy water of your mind settle without shaking the glass. Allow yourself the sacred pause before you react, and trust the quiet, natural timing of your own unfolding. When you finally stop fighting your life, you will instantly find the rest you have been searching for all along. If these lessons touched your heart, share this video with someone who may need a little more peace today. You can let go now.